The People's Platform.
Hello there, a very good evening. Welcome to another edition of The People's Platform. Joining us today is Seroshi Nandasiri, the founder chairperson of the Women's International Forum. A very good evening, Seroshi, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Seroshi, women have been discussed quite a lot. They've come back into the limelight again this year, being an election year. Every political party is talking about the importance of women, how important it is to get the support of women, and how usually women's support for a political party is kind of is a telling sign of the success of that political party. And we've got political parties across the board attesting to this. But Seroshi, this year, not only women, men, children, all alike, they stepped into the new year. It was amidst massive taxes, a massive increase in the cost of living, and all of this. So, against such a backdrop, I mean, it's important to address this one issue, that is, we know for a fact that this economic crisis has impacted everybody across the board, but how has this specifically impacted women living in Sri Lanka, and which strata of women are suffering the most under this economic crisis?
Yeah, Sharan, before we speak about the impact of the economy on women, it's important that we understand the conditions in which the women live in. So, women in the economy, in the society, is something you need to first understand. Now, women in Sri Lanka, we form about 52-53% of the population. But our participation in the world of work, or labor force participation, is around 33%. If you look at this comparatively to the global standing, the global averages, it's 47. So, which is very low. And after COVID, it has even dropped further to 31%, so which is a low number. And also, if you look at women's participation in terms of entrepreneurship, business, and all of that, SMEs, only 25% is represented by women. So that also gives you an indication as to the poor participation of women, especially in the economic sectors. So when the participation of women is low in terms of their economic activity, what happens is their vulnerabilities gets high. Because you depend on somebody for your economic means. So as a result, your vulnerabilities they are quite high. So you are prone for more suffocation, like violence, harassment, you name it, discrimination, all of that. The whole gamut of things that we are talking about, women are, they suffer because of these things due to a lack of economic participation, because they don't have money in their hands to make decisions, to make choices, and to put those choices and decisions into practice. And the other thing is their participation, just like what you said at the beginning, their participation in politics. If you look at our parliament, it's just 5%. Or even less. I think it's around 5%.
And even many of those representatives are either wives, daughters of former
coming from a lineage,
yes.
Right? And also, if you look at the corporate sector, in the corporate boardrooms, it's limited to 10%, which is also very less. So what happens is women's participation is not there when it comes to decision making, when it comes to policy making. When it comes to talking about these serious issues that women, sometimes they are specific to women, sometimes you need a debate, a brainstorming, and a perspective coming in. But unfortunately, that is not happening adequately because women's participation is quite less there. And the other factor is, if you look at the life expectancy, usually the average life expectancy in Sri Lanka is around 77 years. Women live longer. We live like 80, 82, right? So that is also something that we negate. Those are having long-term macro level implications, which we haven't even talked about. I will tell you how this is impacting, because when the economy is going down, lot of the time the younger families tend to migrate. So the kids are going out of the country. And when the wife, now in Sri Lanka, only 1 in 3 are taking part in economic activism. Majority of them are, depending on your spouse or somebody for, economic support. So they are not independent economically. So they depend on somebody. And when the children also go out, you can look after the husband, but when it comes to your time, there is nobody to look after you in terms of physical support. In terms of financial support also, since you depend on somebody, you don't have that independence or the luxury to look after yourself. And this elderly care is not cheap. It's quite expensive. And also in Sri Lanka,
it's not very freely available in Sri Lanka.
It's not freely available, and we have a very informal care system. It's not regulated, it's not established, it's not structured, and also the very little we have, they're quite expensive. So sometimes you're being excluded. So the people who can afford, who can economically afford, can benefit out of it, but majority would be excluded out of it. So what happens is, you live in a bankrupt country without any economic means, you don't have economic support, and your kids are also out of the country sometimes, or maybe they are like, they are having their own problems, and you live longer. You live longer. So that could be a huge problem for women. These are factors. So Sri Lankan population is also aging. So when the population is aging, these kind of stuff we have really not factored enough. It could, living longer is a benefit. It's amazing. It's a good sign of our healthcare system, right? And how our cultures, the societies have evolved. It's a good indication towards the HDI, Human Development Index. But with no means, when you age, it can be a curse. It's the other way around. So these are the repercussions that the policymakers also need to take into account. And also, if you look at, we have 2 beautiful reports which we can piggyback on. One is from the World Economic Forum comes the Gender Gap Index, and then we have UNDP publishers the Gender Inequality Index. So if you refer to these 2 reports, they tell us a story which is really not so good. They tell us that our gender equality index is dropping, and it has been dropping for a considerable period of time.
So the gender equality index in Sri Lanka?
It's dropping drastically. Okay. It's dropping drastically, and we boast of having, we are like the star in the South Asian region. We used to be the star. Right? Sri Lanka was ranked number 1. I met a couple of my friends recently at a forum. One is a Nepalian friend, the other one is an Indian friend. Both of them were telling me how good the Sri Lankan system is, right? They always tend to look at what Sri Lanka is doing in terms of human development side, in terms of women, all that. We have been that, benchmarking, that sort of go-to place for most of our regional counterparts. But at the moment, Maldives is doing better than us, Bangladesh is doing better than us, Nepal is doing better than us. All these counterparts are, basically surpassing us. So we are dropping on our position, on that being the star of South Asia. So why is this happening? We have constantly invested in health. We have constantly invested in education. Even though we have invested, we have done the investment, which is amazing, but we have not created an environment and not created adequate opportunities for our women to give back those returns in terms of economic participation, in terms of political participation. So Sri Lanka lagged behind in those 2 areas. So this is the context in which the women in Sri Lanka live in. So it is in this backdrop that we need to talk about the 2 questions that you have raised. One in terms of the economic side, the other in terms of the political side.
So, Seroshi, speaking on these two arms, of course, they're interconnected, intertwined. Yes. So, which comes first, really? I mean, now you have women's not necessarily increase in political participation in terms of representation. I mean, there is no massive spike in the number of females running as candidates from political parties for whichever election, for that matter, but there is an increase in political participation insofar as attending political rallies, being more vocal about the situation in the country, so on and so forth. So, does that increase in political participation in any way or form indicate a possible increase in economic participation of women in the country?
I would say it's the other way around.
Okay.
It's the other way around. When you are economically independent, you have more freedom, more space for you to come into politics or to leadership. I mean, forget about politics. It's leadership positions. Whether it's parliament, whether it's local government, or whether it's corporate sector, wherever it is, it's the leadership positions. So women get the space, the confidence, and also the backing when you are economically independent. Right. Just imagine a woman without any of those, economic independence. I mean, she cannot even think of rising to those positions if she's not independent. So economic independence or economic empowerment stands the core for me. Personally, I believe in that. I mean, you become quite stronger, quite formidable inside and out when you are economically sound. So economic empowerment stands tall. Now, when the economic crisis hits, when the crisis hits, the first person or the first strata to lose jobs is women. It's women. And that's why we see the numbers dropping in terms of women's participation from 33 to 31 because of COVID. Now it has even drastically dropped. And also when the economy is shrinking, we lose jobs. And when the jobs are being added, the new jobs are being added, the first to get those jobs are men. They are the first to get, because there is a perception by people. They think when you have an economic crisis, everything is collapsing. Shalan, we are living in a bankrupt country. Everything is service quality to you name it. Everything is, it has dropped drastically. The standard of living, everything has dropped, deteriorated. So when everything is collapsing or melting down, I mean, a lot of the people on a lot of platforms, this is especially coming from men, they are thinking, gender equality is good, women's empowerment is good, but park it for the time being.
Yeah, it's not a priority right now.
It's not a priority right now. The problem here is people think it's a human rights perspective. They look at gender equality, women's empowerment in a more legal, that perspective, human rights, legal perspective. Or sometimes they look at it in a more social perspective. Actually speaking, it has a more strategic economic story behind it, and people don't understand this. So one of the reasons why I think our indexes are dropping, gender equality, the women's empowerment indexes are dropping, is because it's not because we haven't done anything. There are so many organizations operating in this space. There are so many policymakers operating in this space. There are a lot of investments being done. There are a lot of development sector partners who have come in and invested. But something is missing. Something is truly missing. And what is truly missing is people have not realized the importance of this concept. Why do we need women to be empowered? Why do we need to create space for them? Why do we need women to come into the world of work? What is the importance? So they just pay lip service to these concepts without knowing the importance. I think that is the main problem. Now, if you look at in economic terms, in an economy, the most important thing is resources and the resource usage. That's simple economics. That's pretty much it. That's economics, right? How much of resources you have, how well are you utilizing the resources? That's economics, right? It's broader than that. I'm just simplifying. So, what is your most important resource? Your human resource. That's the most important resource in an economy, right? So, in this human resource, who represents the majority of it? Women, right? And how well are you using this human resource, important human resource, in the economic activities? Just 31% or 33%. That's it. So what happens? Your economy is an inefficient economy. No wonder we are bankrupt. It's an inefficient economy. So you need to utilize your important resources in an effective, efficient manner. And we call those economies smart economies. So our economy is not smart. So we need to promote these concepts because it's all about, it's not a mere human rights, it is a big human rights concept and an issue, right? I'm not negating that, I'm not putting it down at all. It is a socially important concept, but equally important is its economic impact, especially in a country like this, where we are suffocating from all forms of economic collapse. In a bankrupt country, I mean, what better time we have than this time?
Well, of course, I believe it's Winston Churchill who said that you must never let a good crisis go to waste.
Absolutely.
And that's what we find ourselves in right now here in Sri Lanka. We've come to a very interesting point in our discussion. We'll cross over to a short commercial break, however, and see you on the other side. Don't go anywhere. You're watching The People's Platform.
The People's Platform.
Welcome back. You're watching The People's Platform. We're continuing our discussion with Seroshi Nandasiri, the chairperson, founder of the Women's International Foundation. Seroshi, we were speaking about the importance of women's participation in the economic sector of the country and how it's not just a human rights issue or a social issue or a human rights concept or a social concept only, but it is also a very important economic concept, an economic indicator, maybe even a factor that differentiates between a regular economy and a smart economy. But Seroshi, now moving forward this year, the most important, the most widely discussed topic really right now is elections. People have been wanting elections since the beginning of this year. Elections were announced, elections were postponed. Whether or not that was done legally or illegally is still a matter that is being mooted before the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka, so we'll have to wait on that and keep that on the side for a moment. But what has been confirmed is that this year is an election year, and speaking about not just women's issues, not just economic issues, but any issue in general, since we're living in a community, it's the leadership of that community that needs to push forward these agendas, push forward these concepts and these means of getting out of this economic crisis. And therefore, you can't give second priority to the election that is coming up this year, or elections that are coming up this year. And like you said at the beginning of the program, 52% of Sri Lanka are women. So women are going to have a massive say. A majority say, or even the lion's share at the election this year. So we can also see that in how political parties are now trying to woo women, of course, by flattering them, giving them additional prominence, and maybe even special treatment in some instances. But Seroshi, you've worked with women. You've been in Sri Lanka for the longest time. You've seen how political parties make promises, have big slogans and whatnot, and then just, don't deliver, continue on the same bad path down. So for the 52% of women in this country, what do you think should take priority when they choose to decide who to vote for?
For me, Sharan, there are three important factors. When we are deciding on the political preferences, we should look at these three pillars.
Okay.
The first one is foreign policy.
Okay.
Second one is economy.
First one is foreign policy.
It's foreign policy.
Okay.
Second one is economy. Third one is education for me. Why do I say foreign policy? Because, Shalan, we are in a very strategically important place. Our location is strategically located. This is all, I mean, if you look at international relations or foreign policy relations, every decision is more or less linked to trade, international trade. So we are a hub. We are in the Indian Ocean.
Seroshi, I understand there's of course reasoning behind those three options, but due to the lack of time, just before we get into the reasoning behind those, now you said foreign policy, economy and education. All right, education, I do understand, a majority of women in Sri Lanka would understand the importance of education and why that should be on maybe a checklist that they have or to check the policies of whoever they're electing that they have on education. Economy, I think that's just across the board, not just women, everyone. But I believe most of Sri Lankan women would find it a little bit difficult to relate with you or to even understand the intricacies of foreign policy and why that should be on their list of what they should check off.
What we do, Shalan, is we have created a wave of knowledge sharing. Now recently, while we are talking to women, we have also started a program for fathers. Reason is, equally to women, we need to upgrade our father's role as well. So we have been talking to a lot of grassroots level people. We have been talking to a lot of masses within Sri Lanka. What I have felt is that people understand, I mean, this is a country where you have a high literacy rate. People understand, but you have to talk in a more balanced, more holistic and more understandable language. When you talk sense to them, they make sense out of it. So I don't believe in the fact that people don't understand. I think people do understand. I have spoken to the smallest person to the top persons, I mean across the whole spectrum, and I believe even the smallest of the people understand better than the top-notch people. That is something I have learned through my experience. Only thing is that we don't make sense to them. So they just negate the whole concept. We need to create political literacy among our people. Right? When you don't have political literacy among our people, only they switch to, who is coming? If you have celebrities coming in, I would vote because I know that's awareness, right? So I know that person, I will vote, right? Or these people have given me packet of rice or something like that, or help me put my child to a school or something like that, I will vote. I mean that we cannot afford that anymore. That culture has to stop, right? Political literacy of people is important. I mean the people who would understand this, what I'm talking about the most, would be women. So we are trying to also give this to men as well through programs, right? It doesn't matter who comes into power. It doesn't matter. We have no allegiance to any political party, right? Our allegiance is with the public, right? Because this is our country, our people. We see the suffering day in, day out, right? And when our mothers, they cut down on their nutrition, they cut down on the education. I mean, the first who would not go to school is all girls, right? That's the first person not to go. And they cut down on their health. We have invested heavily in health. That is one indicator we are performing really well. But we are just reversing all the work that our people have done, the investment our people have made. In these, we are reversing everything back. So people are cutting down on all of these and they're struggling. It's a huge struggle. If you go into among the masses, the crying, the suffering, all that, it's quite eminent.
So, Seroshi, we're in the final minute of this program. One final question to you. How confident are you that even after this crisis, at least after this crisis, all of these pertinent factors will be taken into consideration, not just by women, but by the general public as a whole? Since you've been working with, like you said, men and women now, what's your reading like? Do you think there's going to be a more sensible result, at least this time around?
I'll tell you. I don't think there will be much change in terms of political. I mean, whoever comes into power, there won't be much. We can't expect much change from
Overnight.
that. Overnight. Nothing can be changed overnight. So I don't expect, and I would say we should not expect anything drastic from these political parties. But I'm very optimistic. We can make a change. We the people. We have to start with our own people. We can be the change. I can be the change. Right? And if we start changing ourselves and slowly building our own lives, our own communities, and that will put pressure on the political parties to be more pragmatic, to be more honest, to be more forward looking and strategic. Because at the moment we need policymakers who are strong enough and who they're representing 22 million people and they're going into we are not detached from the international we are part of it.
Yes.
So when you go into a discussion table or negotiation table, we want them to be formidable leaders who will speak on our behalf, right? Not like give in to every demand and really put the country down or put the country in jeopardy. So we want strong people, strong policymakers who think ahead, like 50, 60 years ahead, who are visionaries to come in and build the country. That won't happen, Charlene, I will tell you that.
But of course,
that won't happen overnight.
If the general public continues to keep the leaders
momentum
that they've elected in check, that is definitely a possibility.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Seroshi Nandasiri, founder chairperson of the Women's International Foundation, for joining us on our program this evening. Thank you very much to our viewers out there for tuning in to another episode of The People's Platform. We'll see you again, same time, same place, tomorrow. Until then, take care. God bless.
Remember